Ratna, for joining us and sharing your insight throughout our news from Singapore. Now we move on to our next news. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has warned that the situation at the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant is critical, as the facility has been without power for 7 days. As per reports, one of the diesel generators providing emergency power to the plant is no longer working. It is also the 10th time since the start of the war that the plant, the largest in Europe, has been disconnected from the power grid. Let's listen into what President Zelenskyy has said.
Вже 7-й день, і раніше, до речі, не було такого аварійна ситуація на Запорізькій атомній станції. Ситуація критична. Через російські обстріли станція відключена від живлення, від електромережі. Забезпечується електрикою від дизель-генераторів. Це надзвичайно. Генератори і станція не розраховані на таке і ніколи не працювали в такому режимі так довго. І вже у нас є інформація, що один з генераторів, зараз в Дніпрі ще тривають роботи після удару російських дронів. Удар був цілеспрямований по центру міста. На жаль, постраждали люди. Загалом весь день для східних регіонів Харків, Дніпровщина, також наша Сумщина, Чернігівщина – це фактично постійні повітряні загрози. Харків був під ударом. На Чернігівщині був удар по підстанції, зараз триває відновлення. На Сумщині в ніч на цей день росіяни вбили цілу родину. Просто вбили в будинку. Жінка, чоловік, 2 маленьких дітей, 4-7 років діткам було. Жінка була вагітна. Удар російського дрону. Мої співчуття рідним та близьким, ми обов'язково відповімо Росію на їхні удари.
Meanwhile, Russia on Tuesday has launched a rare daytime drone attack on the Ukrainian city of Dnipro, killing 1 man, injuring 20 other people, and damaging medical facilities as well as residential and office buildings. Serhiy Lysak, the regional governor of Dnipro, has said that the attack targeted the center of the industrial city at a time when people were at work and children were in schools. Let's listen into what one of the residents has said.
Я зайшла додому, прийшов кот, накормила кота, прилягла, я працюю кондуктором у трамваї. Прийшла. Перший був не дуже, а вторий я вже бачила, як воно летить, такий спалах і гучно, ми перелякалися, і кот, і я, і взагалі до сих пор труси. А потім побачили вже дим, вийшло до калітки, а там палає машина, і все, це було дуже лячно. Ми не знаємо, у нас тут все було, а тут мешканці відлітали, це було жахіття.
Now for this discussion, we're joined by Shruti Das Gupta. She's an international affairs expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Shruti, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this news coming in, what are the potential risks to Ukrainians as well as Europeans if the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant remains without power or suffers a failure of its backup systems moving forward? As we know that Ukraine, as well as some countries over there, are extremely cold in the coming months.
Greetings, Asuma. Thank you so much for inviting me. The Zaporizhzhia plant has been under Russian occupation since 2022, and all its 6 plants have been shut down. So the plant does not supply energy to anybody, not Ukraine, not Russia, nobody. The emergency power supplies are kept on only so that the uranium inside it, the radioactive material doesn't start disintegrating and the plant doesn't turn into a nuclear bomb on its own. So for that, the graphite rods, the other safety equipment, they need to be powered. Since the power plant itself is not generating any electricity, external supply is given to it via power supply lines and other means, so that these emergency situations keep the radioactive material in the stable state. So now that we understand that this power supply, power plant was not supplying any electricity, we need to understand why Ukraine is raising a red flag over this. It is because even as of last week, the IAEA themselves who have monitors there on the plant, at the site of the plant, have been saying that because of the attacks that have been happening, the supply lines that was coming, I think the latest one, which was about 1.5 kilometers away from the plant, the Russian attack, ended up severing the supply lines and disturbing the power supply that was keeping the plants and its radioactive materials stable. Now, the last line of defense has kicked in, which is the diesel power generators that they have kicked in, and that would result in when they are supposed to be absolutely bare emergency. There have been about 10 times, I think you've covered that in your report, there have been 10 times since this entire war that the Zaporizhzhia plant has become a point of contention, a critical place. So if those generators are not stocked, they are not kept with diesel supply, continuous diesel supply till the time the electricity line is repaired, the plant itself could go into radiation leaks, which would be like a Chernobyl kind of situation, where a large section of land, people would be exposed to nuclear radiation, and we would see a huge loss to humanity. So this is exactly the reason why this plant has been flagged by IAEA and now Zelenskyy. He's saying that the Russian attacks are not enabling the repair of the line. The IAEA has asked both sides to at least consider the benefit of humanity and continue the plant in stable state, whether it is functioning as a nuclear plant or not. So these are the demands and the kinds of crisis the Zaporizhzhia plant is facing, and this is the reason why Ukraine is asking for international actors to step up and ask Putin and his forces to refrain from attacking till the time they repair their supply lines. Now, Russia on its side is saying they are not hampering any work. Ukraine is using this particular rhetoric to try and frame Russia as a villainous aggressor rather than a reasonable force which is asking to protect its own national sovereignty by disabling Ukraine's military infrastructure and enabling the non-compliance of NATO of Ukraine. So these are, apart from the political situation, there is a narrative twisting happening from both sides. The IAEA says the plant is critical because the diesel supply line, the diesel power generators are the last line, and they are acting as of now.
And Shruti, since you've mentioned the international institution, what role should and can these international institutions like IAEA play in mitigating risks posed by these ongoing hostilities from both sides on both countries? And are they, do you think, still equipped to handle such crises in the context of modern warfare?
The IAEA can only act as a guard of the nuclear equipment that is placed, whether it is a military infrastructure, whether it is an enriching plant, or whether it is a nuclear plant. Their job is to alert the world and the powers, the geopolitical powers, of any foul play that might happen. Because any kind of Chernobyl like action or a nuclear explosion happening would not just damage Ukraine, it would damage generations of humanity. It is very devastating. So their job is to raise red flags. And they're doing that. They've done that with Iran conflict as such. They've played a similar role with the Ukraine conflict. They have kept both sides aware of how far their military actions are damaging the functioning of the plant, or at least the security of the plants. Ukraine has, I think, 6 or 4 of these reactors, and they are keeping everybody aware of the current day situation. They are unable to actually physically go and make any protective gestures. Their job is only to work as a watchdog, and that is what they are doing. So for currently, they're trying to keep both sides aware and on even keel as far as the general benefit of humanity is there. But what happens here on 4th comes from the external power sources that are connected to this fight. Everybody has to come down and sit on the table and measure whether what they're doing for the world and for themselves is beneficial or wrong. How far is too far? Which point can be used as a pressure point? Whether a nuclear reactor on its own can be turned into a narrative warfare or an actual pressure point for Ukraine is something that all the players everybody who's a stakeholder in this war should consider before they go on forth and make any accusations or any further actions. So IAEA is doing its role. It is telling everybody
Yes.
in black and white what the situation is. Now the ball is in the courts of people who want NATO in Ukraine and the Ukrainian leader himself and Putin.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Shruti Das Gupta for joining us and sharing that insight as an international affairs